Hey, my friends, it's Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. And one time I took my family to a beach. It was a big, super long beach. I've never seen one like this before anywhere. And the waves, when they came in, it was like a mile-long wave that would all come in at once. It's a pretty tall wave. And it looked like all the water everywhere, anywhere on this beach was the same. And so we frolicked all up and down this huge, long beach all afternoon. It was wonderful, magical memories. We didn't pay any attention to where we were swimming because it looked like the most uniform thing ever, right? But we get into this one little spot, body surfing and playing catch and stuff. And I can feel the water underneath me is different right here. It's powerful, it's sneaky, and I'm not totally in control here. It kind of freaked me out. And then I look up and I can see on my son's face that he's recognizing the same physical reality at the same moment as he's being pulled away from me out toward the deep. Now, everything was fine. I was able to grab him without anybody panicking or getting out of control. We caught it early, and we all grabbed hands and relied on each other's strength to march out of this one weird little spot, this little eddy, this little undertow area that you never would have seen with the naked eye. Now, what we did there is not terribly complicated. You do this all the time. When you identify a very powerful, dangerous thing in a place where you didn't see it coming, you quickly adjust your behavior on account of that. That's all we did. And that gets you through life. It works pretty well. Likewise, in the Bible, you see a whole lot of moments where people didn't see God coming. And then all of a sudden they have some kind of encounter with God, or they're just loosely in proximity of the power of a deity who the Bible holds out as having no limits. He knows everything. He's got power over time and space and nature and everything. And in that moment, they are moved. And there's this consistent reaction that you get throughout the Bible in response to that power, this physiological response. Like, people can't help it. They fall on their face. They fall at the feet of God or God's messengers as they realize the world isn't exactly the way they thought it was, and they're much smaller than they ever realized they were, and time doesn't work how it is, and existence is bigger than they thought existence was. And there's this moment of shock and awe and helplessness and fear that happens both in the Old Testament and the New Testament when people encounter God. In the Old Testament, you got the messengers of God showing up, and when people figure out who they're dealing with, they fall on their faces. I mean, Moses figures it out and is overcome. It's hard for him to know how to even respond to the presence of I am right there out in the wilderness. The prophets at times are overwhelmed by what they see. Isaiah, Ezekiel. It's hard to even know what to do physically in response to that kind of power and authority. And then in the New Testament, Peter sees the miraculous work of Jesus, and when it clicks, he can't even look at him. He puts his head down. He's like, "You got to get away from me. I'm a sinful man. How can this even?" I mean, he loses it because he's so blown away by the power of God. It's a healthy degree of fear, mixed with awe, mixed with respect. The centurion at the cross, dude has no skin in this game at all, but he sees the powerful work of God while all of that's going on. And what does he say? Surely this man is the Son of God. And I think when you look at that motif throughout the Bible through very modern lenses, it feels a little weird, a little off to us, because we live in a very novel time where people think about their journey of life and faith and so forth in very therapeutic terms. And that's new. A lot of the journey of self-actualization and self-realization, the way we do that is pretty unprecedented in history. And oftentimes we think of conversion, if you will, some kind of an encounter with God or a step toward belief in God, as happening exclusively within those categories, those best therapeutic practices and so forth. That it's just kind of, it's the language of the day that we use to talk about spiritual maturity or health or whatever you want to call it. But fear, you'd never want to make a spiritual change out of fear. That's not how we've done things for approximately the last 20 years. And, whatever we've done for the last 20 years, it's the best idea we've ever had in all of the history of humanity, because it's what we did most recently. Therefore, it's the best idea. So I think in light of how we think about this kind of thing, like conversion or an encounter with God now, it might look a little strange to go back and look at the Bible and realize so many of the moments where people convert are born out of fear. It's a healthy fear. It's a respect fear. Like, I didn't come away from my encounter with that little eddy and undertow in the ocean and think like, I'm afraid of you because you're abusive and you're a cruel ocean and an ugly ocean. How could you do that to me? No, it's what the ocean is. It's bigger than me. It's powerful. It's not really doing anything out of the ordinary to me. I just put my family in close proximity of a very powerful thing. And I guess I just didn't understand how powerful that thing was. I didn't recognize it. And as soon as I did, I had a healthy fear response to that. Same thing with God. So much of the time when in the Bible we see people respond to God out of fear, it isn't fear of a monster or something that is a thriller, violent or bloody or dark and evil and spooky like Halloween or something. It's not like that at all. It's awe at the power of the thing. And it's not just the power, it's the realization that comes in a moment for so many people we see in the Bible that, whoa, things are not how I thought things were. I'd built a whole system of thought in my life about things being a certain way, maybe with some local pagan deities, maybe with physics and science and time and politics and the seasons and just basic rules of life that I thought defined and answered everything. But now I've got in close proximity of this incredibly powerful thing, this maker of all things. And in an instant, you see people have this crisis of understanding, this crisis of smallness, as they realize that they're not as in control of things as they thought, that the mere existence of a deity who made existence out of non-existence, the mere existence of a deity who decided that existence as we know it would exist instead of not existing, the existence of a deity who's master over time and space and physics and can do whatever he wants and is never wrong in his judgments, that repositions you in your own brain. And these characters in the Bible, we get to watch them go through that in an instant. And that, I think, very healthy, very understandable fear that comes with being somewhere near the providential, miraculous work of God, it shakes people up a little bit. And why on earth wouldn't it do that? We see another one of those cases here at the end of Esther chapter 8. And we've been talking about this edict that went out from Mordecai and Esther that effectively undoes the edict of Haman. And everybody's super happy about it. The non-Jewish citizens of Susa, they are elated and they're celebrating. Mordecai's all dressed up in royal robes and purple, and he's got a crown of gold. And then all the Jews get wind of this counter edict, and now they're celebrating all around the empire. But what about the people who were sharpening their knives? How do they respond to this? Well, we get one little look at it here. It says in the very last verse of Esther chapter 8, and many people of other nationalities became Jews because fear of the Jews had seized them. Now, look, obviously, we're going to spend at least another day breaking down that. There's a ton of implications to it. But at the simplest level, I just want to think about that. My first reaction is, oh, that's not a good reason to convert. Some positive experience or awakening of belief or something like that. That's why you should convert. But then I think about it and I'm like, well, why did I convert? I guess in part it was because of the fatherly presence of God and his attributes, love and kindness and forgiveness and patience and all of that. But all of those attributes of God pop so much more for me when I think about the fact that he's like that, along with being the source of all power in existence and knowledge in all of existence. It's crazy that something that powerful would have such tenderness as well. And so I guess part of the reason that I'm a Christian is that I do think that God is real, and I do think that God has unbelievable, unmatched, unimaginable power, and there's a healthy fear that comes with that. Not thriller fear, not spooky fear, not I don't want to get abused fear, just reality fear. You are all of that, God, and I am just this little blip on the timeline, this little blip on the map. One of the most famous verses in the Bible is Proverbs 9:10. It says, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and the knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." If I'm reading that right, it seems like what we're being told there is that when a person starts to understand the vastness and power and character of God, when you get even a little bit of a look at that, that's when things start to make sense. That's when perspective starts to happen. And I think that's what we see happening here in Esther chapter 8. Zeresh and Haman's buddies, they all figured it out. The God of Abraham, at least from their perspective, is waking up, and he's going to be a part of this thing. We know God has been involved all the way through it as we carefully read the book of Esther, but from their perspective. And they knew before it was even over that this is decided. When that God is on the move, he wins. The end. And even from their limited perspective, they knew how to respond. And it looks like the other people responded the same way. Oh, well, that's the one true God. All of the goofing around and joking about this little stone God or this little carved God, it all gets set aside right now. And the only thing that makes sense, given the way this is all providentially coming together in a way that could only be orchestrated by the true God who's master of history and time and space and the will of people and everything, the only way that could all work out is if that God were doing something. And I don't want to be in the way of that train. So what do I have to do to be on the side of that God? So yeah, it looks like conversion motivated by fear. Also, are you reading Esther with me? It looks like common sense. My first instinct was to disparage it. My second instinct is, well, what you just heard in this episode. I respect it. Okay, more on that next time around. Hey, I've got so many cool things cooking right now. I keep thinking about what we're doing. The whole point of this exercise is going through these things, doing this together, hanging out every day like we do. I don't want this to all start lumping together and to feel like, well, just in general, we've read and we've thought and we made progress. I want there to be some kind of markers physically that you can hold, that you can have, that you can look at, that are a reminder of the ground you took in growth and understanding and whatever it is as we go through each of these seasons, as we go through each of these books. And so I'm working on some little markers, some little tokens to help make that a reality moving forward for all of these books. I don't quite have everything done yet, so I know I just keep hinting at it. And at minimum, I'm going to be sending out something a little bit above and beyond the little blank page field notes booklets that we send out that are labeled each book of the Bible that we look at. I should be able to announce that soon. I just want to get all my ducks in a row before I do. I'm just very excited about it. I've been working on it every day. So there you go. There's yet another teaser about all of that. Okay, more on this mass conversion event that happens at the end of Esther chapter 8 next time around. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. Let's do this again soon.
Thank you to all of you who have taken the time to leave a rating and review on your podcast apps. We're grateful because it's encouraging and it helps new people find their way here.